Module 13, the digestive system. The stomach. After the bolus moves through the lower esophageal sphincter, it makes it to the stomach. The stomach is located just to the left of the body's midline and just below the diaphragm. This organ behaves primarily as a storage area for food as it waits to be more completely digested. In fact, a person can actually live without a good portion of his or her stomach. It is able to greatly expand its size to accommodate a large amount of food. One of its major jobs is to add acid to the bolus as it enters. This will kill most harmful bacteria or other harmful organisms that may be in the food. This also alters the pH to a more acidic level, so the digestive enzymes will do a better job. For example, acidifying food helps protein digestion because the enzymes that break down proteins do a better job when they are at a lower pH. Now, the stomach has 4 main regions. The cardiac region is composed of the lower esophageal sphincter and the entrance to the stomach. It's a small region, as you can see, and it's near the location of the heart, thus its name. The next region is the fundus. The body is the largest region of the stomach, and the pylorus is the area that joins the small intestine. The pylorus ends in the pyloric sphincter, which is a section of circular muscle that controls the flow of materials from the stomach to the small intestine. Now let's talk about the tissue that makes up the stomach. The stomach is surrounded by an outer layer called the serosa. It's a thin layer of simple squamous epithelium and connective tissue that's slippery. Thus, it lets the stomach move and churn with little friction. Beneath the serosa are 3 layers of smooth muscle. They're called the muscularis. The first of these 3 layers is the longitudinal muscularis. The next one is the circular muscularis, and the final one is the oblique muscularis. Like the names describe, the muscle fibers are oriented in different directions so that contractions can occur in several ways. Deep to the muscularis layers is the submucosa. It's comprised of a layer of connective tissue that has blood vessels and nerves. Its job is to also connect the muscularis to the next layer, called the mucosa. The mucosa has lots and lots of folds called rugae. When the stomach is filled with food, these rugae unfold and the mucosa becomes stretched and smooth. Then, as the stomach empties, the mucosa folds up again and the rugae can be seen. The mucosa is made of epithelial tissue, specifically simple columnar epithelium. In this mucosal layer of epithelium, there are lots of gastric pits. The pits are openings for gastric glands to secrete lots of gastric juice each day. Gastric juice is the acidic secretions of the stomach. Your stomach can secrete up to 3 liters of gastric juice daily. It has a pH of anywhere from 1 to 3, so it's very acidic. Now, you already learned that living things do better in neutral pH environments, near pH of 6 to 7. Why doesn't this acidic material hurt the stomach tissue? Well, the cells near the gastric pits secrete lots and lots of mucus. They produce so much that gastric juice never really touches stomach tissue. The acid that gastric juice contains is hydrochloric acid. This strong acid will kill most bacteria or other living organisms in the bolus. It can't kill all types of bacteria, unfortunately, so if we eat food that is rotten, we could get sick. Sometimes a person becomes infected by a specific bacterium called Helicobacter pylori. This bacterial species is acid resistant and can cause inflammation in the stomach or stomach ulcers. Under normal circumstances, though, most bacteria are killed by the hydrochloric acid in the stomach. This acid is also important in activating the enzyme called pepsin, which breaks down proteins into smaller amino acid chains called peptides. The peptides have to be further digested into their amino acids before they can be absorbed by the body, though. Pepsin is just the first line of protein digestion. Now, there are other materials in gastric juice besides hydrochloric acid. There are 5 different types of cells in the gastric glands. Thus, other materials are secreted. Pepsinogen is a chemical that, when mixed with the hydrochloric acid and pepsin molecules, will itself be changed into pepsin. This is a necessary activation process because if the gastric glands just made pepsin, they would be continually making a chemical that can digest proteins, and the stomach itself is made of proteins. Protein digesting enzymes would destroy the cells, So instead, the gastric glands make pepsinogen, which cannot break down proteins. Then when it makes it into the stomach and is exposed to hydrochloric acid, it converts to pepsin and begins to digest proteins. The gastric glands also secrete intrinsic factor. Now, even though a person can live without most of his own or her stomach, this is one thing they cannot live without. Intrinsic factor is necessary for your body to absorb vitamin B12. It binds to the vitamin so it can be absorbed once it makes it to the small intestine. So therefore, if a person has lost a large part of the stomach due to a tumor or other infection, they have to have regular vitamin B12 injections because intrinsic factor will not be secreted into the digestive tract. A final fact about the stomach is that it is controlled by both the autonomic nervous system and the endocrine system. The gastric glands can produce hormones for endocrine control. However, the hormones aren't secreted into the stomach, they're secreted into the blood. We can't have a discussion about the stomach without talking about some of the interesting sounds it can make. For example, have you ever been so hungry that your stomach starts to growl? It rumbles and gurgles like this for several reasons, more than just you being hungry. If you are hungry, those sounds are created because your stomach is emptied of food, but it does have air in it. As the stomach muscles move around then, the air vibrates, making those embarrassing grumbling sounds. To stop it from happening, you just have to have a healthy snack. But the stomach can also make sounds if your blood glucose levels are low, or if you're walking by a bakery and catch a smell of delicious baked bread. That can begin the process of peristalsis, and your stomach begins to churn. Another fun sound that your stomach can cause is a burp. That's due to the excess air that gets trapped in your stomach when you eat or drink. As it builds up there, air pressure increases and the lower esophageal sphincter opens up so air can move back up the esophagus and out the mouth. Well, now you know how to anatomically describe how we burp. Earlier, I discussed the 4 layers of the stomach: the outer layer, or the serosa, the muscle tissue, called the muscularis, the connective tissue, called the submucosa, and the mucosa below that. These 4 layers are called tunics, and they're pretty much the same all the way down the alimentary canal. The intestines, for example, have all of these 4 tunics too. One difference, though, has to do with how many layers of muscularis tissue there are. For example, most of the alimentary canal only has 2 layers of muscularis, the circular and the longitudinal, but the stomach also has the oblique muscularis layer. And instead of serosa, the esophagus and some parts of the large and small intestine have adventitia. Adventitia is a thin layer of loose connective tissue that binds an organ to surrounding tissues or organs. Though the stomach does not really play a major role in digestion, it does have other functions. Its smooth muscle has motor responsibilities, so its first function would be food storage. And our stomach does this job day in and day out, for the most part, without our having to be conscious of it. As more and more food enters the stomach, its rugae unfold and the smooth muscle relaxes. The next motor function of the stomach is to mix the boluses with gastric juice so that more chemical digestion can begin. With the addition of gastric juice, the bolus becomes more liquefied and is called chyme. The mixing of these 2 materials is due to the stomach's rhythmic pattern of relaxing and contracting. The mixing waves happen every 20 seconds when there's food in the stomach, so the boluses can mix with the digestive juice. During this time, pepsin is added to the chyme, so proteins can be broken down into peptides. The stomach also undergoes a bit of peristalsis, so the chyme is moved down into the pylorus. But its action involves gentle peristaltic waves, as opposed to the strong mixing waves which mix up the food. The chyme eventually makes its way to the pyloric sphincter and moves into the small intestine in small amounts. Thus, the stomach slowly empties its contents into the small intestine, rather than all at once. And the more protein and fat that is in the food, the more time it will spend in the stomach, up to 4 hours, before it's digested enough to move through the pyloric sphincter. Now, the stomach can do another motor function. You may not like this one, but it does play an important role in your health. Vomiting is due to the alimentary canal becoming irritated. When this happens, action potentials are sent to the medulla oblongata, and if they occur rapidly enough, the medulla sends signals so the body vomits. This is a coordinated effort on the part of the body. First, the lungs are signaled to inhale. Then the larynx and epiglottis close up. The soft palate closes the nasal cavity, and both the upper and lower esophageal sphincters relax. Then the diaphragm and abdominal muscles strongly and rapidly contract to push against the stomach. Because the esophageal sphincters are open, the material in the stomach is ejected up and out of the mouth. Though this may sound like a gross and unwanted reflex, it's very helpful to the body if you have accidentally ingested food that may be rotting or poisonous. From the mouth down to the esophagus, the control of the digestion is given to the nervous system, but the stomach is controlled by both the nervous system and the endocrine system. So both nerves and hormones can control the stomach, as well as the liver and the pancreas. Besides the chemicals you already learned about, the stomach secretes a hormone called gastrin. One purpose of gastrin is to increase the muscle tone of the lower esophageal sphincter so it can contract more strongly and stay closed. That's a good thing, because if that muscle becomes weak, acidic gastric juices can back up into the esophagus. The esophagus does not have thick mucus protection like the stomach, so it could become irritated, resulting in gastroesophageal reflux. That's just a technical term for heartburn. It's called heartburn because you feel a burning sensation in the area of the heart, which is where the cardiac region of the stomach is. Now, gastrin also can decrease pyloric tone. That means the pyloric sphincter muscle weakens and allows food to move out of the stomach into the small intestine more rapidly. Another job of gastrin is to increase the secretion rate from the gastric pits, so more mucus is released into the stomach. It also increases the mixing waves of the stomach so that food is churned faster. So overall, you can say that gastrin does work to help digestion in the stomach occur more quickly. To sum up, the major functions of the stomach are secretory and motor functions, but the stomach also has some absorptive functions too. Water can move through the stomach wall so it can be absorbed into the bloodstream. Alcohol can also do this. That's why alcohol can cause stomach ulcers, because as it moves through the stomach wall, it can irritate the stomach lining. Module 13, the digestive system. Experiment 13.1, histology of the stomach. In this lab, we're going to take a closer look at the human stomach tissue, where we can see the gastric pits and the stomach's mucosa and the submucosa. So we're going to take a slide that is labeled human stomach and pop that onto our stage at 40 power magnification. And go ahead and focus in on the center of the material you're looking at. You should hopefully see just the general structure of the mucosa and the submucosa here. You're going to see a thick layer of tissue that's dark purple. That dark purple has like white channels. It looks almost hairy, if you will, with white channels going between it. Those white channels are the gastric pits that you're looking at. And below that is where you see a lighter purple color material, and that is a layer of the smooth muscle that forms the bottom of the mucosa. And then the thicker pink tissue below that is the submucosa. Go ahead and make a drawing of what you're looking at here at 40 power magnification of the gastric pits and the stomach muscle of the mucosa and the submucosa, labeling what power or magnification you're looking at and those parts. And then you want to increase it to 100 power magnification and refocus again. You can see a lot more cellular detail now. Especially focus now on the tissue that has the gastric pits, that purpley material with lots of white in between. You'll now notice that there's different kinds of cells that line the gastric pits as compared to the rest of the material you're looking at. Those are arranged so that the surface cells secrete mucus. Remember, we're in the stomach. The stomach has to secrete a lot of mucus to protect itself from the acidity that it uses to digest food. And you should also see some dark purple ovals of cells. Those are the cells that make up the gastric glands. So looking here, hopefully you'll see some dark purple cells that are part of the gastric glands. And again, at 100 power magnification, go ahead and make an illustration of what you're looking at, the gastric pits, the surface mucus cells, and the gastric gland cells. And if you have colored pencils, you might be able to color those in so you can identify them, or maybe shade them in if you're using a regular pencil. At this point now, we want to move the slide to the submucosa and look at the cells of the submucosa. We're still at 100 power magnification. So I'm moving the slide over. We have to tweak some refocusing. All right, looking at that submucosa, it's got a structure as well. And there's lots of little ovals. Those are empty ovals surrounded by a wall of cells. Those are the blood vessels. Lots of blood needs to be traveling to these cells to feed them. The other series of ovals that you see are ovals that have cells inside and no wall around them, and those are the lymph nodules that are found here. At this point, you want to increase your magnification to 400 power to get some really good detail. You want to go back and take a look at all of these parts on your slide of the cells and make an illustration in your lab notebook of these sections at a 400 power magnification showing greater detail. Again, label what sections you're looking at and make notations of the magnification of your illustrations as well. Once you've completed that, you can clean everything up and put it away.